Okay, so I basically set up my camera and my microphone just so I could be able to do this because I feel as though this could be really helpful to a lot of people, and I feel as though this is kind of important. So this is my coming out story. It's a long, complicated process. This is just the coming out, not the actual realization that I was gay, because that was another process in itself, and that took years and years and years. So this is kind of an interesting story, I think. I'll try to keep it short. So the very first person I think I told was my friend. I'm not going to use too many names in here. Was a girl that I was dating. Yeah, that wasn't going off so well. But yeah, I just decided that things weren't working and that I needed to tell her because it was really important that she knew. So I went off and I told her, and things were great. She was really great about it. She's really open and accepting, and that helped a lot. But I mean, it was still the very first person I had ever told, so it was like the break in the dam. And that was 2 years ago, I think. It was sophomore year, and I am at the end of my senior year now. So she was number one, and then my next friend, I'll use her name because I love her to death. Her name is Dominique, and she is amazing and spectacular and wonderful in every single way, shape, or form. And somehow I ended up telling her. I think we were having one of our many secret sharing sessions. Try saying that 5 times fast. Um, we were having one of those, and I think it came out. I have a really bad memory, so exact events don't go so well for me, but I'll give you a rough estimate. So I told her, and she was great about it, and that was great. And so that gave me a little bit more confidence. And the next person that I ended up telling, I won't use his name, but that was a complete accident that I ended up telling him because I had just come home from like a horrible day at school, and like the world was going wrong one of those days. And I just had to vent. So I was venting absolutely everything on my mind to this person that I didn't even know all that well. And I'm just like overwhelming him with information. And then I was like, oh yeah, and by the way, I think I'm gay. And then I was like, wait, delete, rewind, something. Please go backwards because that was not supposed to happen at all, ever. Oh my gosh, that was horrible. And like that was agonizing waiting for his response. And then it came back and it was like, oh, it's okay, I'm bi. I was like, what? How could I get so lucky to tell someone who wouldn't hate me? It's someone that I didn't even know hardly at all. And I was like, okay, well, this works. This is okay. I can live with this for now. We'll continue life. It was fun. That was interesting. Oh, let's see what happened next. And then I think later on that year, I started actually realizing things and started to actually feel stuff. So that I started panicking, and I had like an emotional breakdown, and I don't know if it was triggered by this. I think it was triggered by my grades that were slipping, and like I was just in a fetal position on the ground, and oh my god, what's going on? And my dad came in and he's like, you need to go to school, and I was like, no, I can't. And he's like, well, why? What's wrong? And I was like, Dad, I think I'm gay. And he said, you know what? It's okay because I thought I was gay at your age too, but you're not. I was like, no, Dad, I don't think you understand, but we'll drop it for now. This is not the right time. So that was a adventure. That made me feel good about myself, as you can imagine. So that was interesting. Let's see. That was my junior year, and then we get to the rest of junior year. Junior year was awful for me. I decided to take classes that were too hard for me, and I was having a lot of trouble in school. And then in the middle of February, my grandpa died, and I missed like 2 weeks of school, and my grades dropped. I had 5 Fs, and not one of them was above a 13%. And I was getting threatened to get kicked out of everything that I loved because my grades weren't good enough. And I was like in a panic, and everything was going wrong. And then on top of that, I was like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? I'm gay. So I actually went home, and there's a big, huge episode that I really don't want to talk about right now, but maybe later. And from that episode, I ended up having to see a psychologist. And that's the first time I actually admitted to myself that I really was gay. There was no chance of going back. Like, I mean, I still have that kind of maybe sort of thing going on, but that was the moment that I accepted it or started to accept it, because that was a process too. Everything's a process. So then let's see, I ended up telling my psychiatrist, and like as soon as I got done with that appointment, my stepmom was like, so what'd you talk about, what'd you talk about, what'd you talk about? And I was like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. And she's like, I don't care. You're gay, aren't you? I was like, what? Well, matter, yeah. And there was no getting around that one. And my stepmom, she's great. I love her to death. She has been my mom, basically. And she was like, oh, that's so great. I always knew you were, and I completely accept you. And your father, even though it may be difficult at times, he will too. And I was like, oh, God, I hope so. Because we'll see where that goes. And she's like, let me guess, you don't want me to tell him. I was like, yeah, yeah, that would be great. I was basically silent during all of this, and she did all of the talking, which is great. And she's like, I won't tell him. And she never did, which is really impressive, because most parents are like, I'm not going to tell him, then they do. So I was really impressed by her for that. So let's see, we went on with life and accepting, and a couple more random people just to see how it came out. Another really big thing was a random guy, we'll call him random guy. He IM'd me. No, I didn't actually know him. He IM'd me. He's like, hey, is this da 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 da? And I was like, no, it's not. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. He's like, oh, so, well, since I'm here, what's up? And I was like, oh, not much. And he's like, so what's happening? Any girlfriends or anything? I was like, actually, why not? This is the first time to try it out on a random stranger. I'm gay. Oh, that's great. Me too. I was like, huh, what? Are the heavens smiling on me or something? Because this does not happen. And he's like, yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And he was like, I go to CSU. I was like, wait, I don't know you and you live in like the same state? How coincidental is that? That's weird. And then like just all this stuff came unfolding, and he was like, wow, we have like he like lived like, I don't know, 2 blocks away from me. It was crazy. I was like, okay, this is a little bit too crazy. And then he's like, do you have any pictures? I was like, yeah, sure. And I sent him like pictures, and he's like, I meant lower. I was like, wait, no, bye. So that was an interesting step. And I panicked, and I ended up talking to people about it, like other friends that didn't know yet, and that's more people came out. And then finally, I just decided over the summer, this past summer, that I was going to come out to everyone. And the only way to do that is MySpace, or Facebook. So I posted a bulletin, and, I never got one negative comment. It was all positive. And that was great. That helped a lot. And then my parents just walked in. Oh, that would be interesting. And then let's see. So all positive. Like if my page was full of positive comments, and they're like, "Oh, I always knew you were," and everything. I was like, "Oh, that's so nice." And then came the two hardest people to tell, and that was my dad, and then my friend, who has basically led me through high school, and he has been like a mentor for me. So I started out with my mentor. I'll call him that because I don't want to use his name. But I mean, I was really afraid of telling him, because I didn't want him to think like, oh, he spends all this time with me because he has like a weird crush on me, because it's not it. He's just a really good friend. So I talked to him, and I sent him a text. How else would you do it? I sent him a text, and I'm like, I'm gay, and I hope this doesn't affect the way you think of me. And he said he didn't respond to me that night. And I was like, oh God, what have I done? And then he sent me a text next morning. He's like, I'm so sorry I fell asleep on you. And he's like, that's he sent me like this four-page long text, and he's like, oh, well, I will accept you for who you are no matter what, and it won't affect anything. And I was like, wow, what a great guy. And then my dad. It took me 2 months after I told everyone else to tell my dad. Like almost every night I would go upstairs, and I was like, Dad, I have to tell you something. And he'd be like, okay, shoot. And I was like, I'm thirsty. This is acceptable. And he's like, okay, go get a drink. Or I'd make up something. And finally I was just like, Dad, okay, for real this time, I'm gay. And my dad's not exactly, he hasn't always been accepting of it. So it was, that was difficult. But he was like, and you had to tell me this right now. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, I'm gonna need time to process this, but we'll get through it. But I don't want to talk about it right away. And he's like,